Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode 25 of Swinging from the Hip. It looks like I'm all by myself. So if you don't want to hear me singing, make sure you get some comments in there too to talk about. Righty, anywho, on with the show. As I said, we'll look at the disastrous White Ferns tour of Australia. We'll do an IPL update, and then we'll try and get into some of those discussions around anything that you've got out there that you want to talk about. As you said, if you don't want to hear me sing, better get some comments going into those into the chat rooms, and I'll try and keep a track of that as well. And in some breaking, so I was not sure, as I said, not sure who's going to be joining me tonight, if anybody. So I'll start with some breaking news, and this is going to be the last show of Swinging from the Hip. Well, on a Thursday, that is. Next week, we'll be having a week off. I'm just going to move that across there. There we go. We're going to have a week off to rejig our studios and get the new set ready. And we'll be back on Monday nights from the 19th of August. Now, with the cricket season on us here in New Zealand, it's difficult for our regular guests to come on Thursday shows as they usually got coaching on, or even more so the Prem's trainings going, and they're involved with that. So we're looking to move until Monday nights, and hopefully with that scheduling, we'll be able to get our guests available and onto the show. So just remember that we'll be off air next Thursday, but returning on the 19th of October, and put that in date in your diary. Now, back to normal transmission. We kick off as we normally do with This Week in History. So we'll go along to the 3rd of October in 1996. South Africa scored one of its biggest ODI victories to that point with a 202-run victory over Kenya. South Africa made 305 for 8 and then bowled Kenya out inside 26 overs. 2007 on the same day, and Mark Boucher, no, I was going to say Boshier, but Mark Boucher broke Ian Healy's record of 395 dismissals to become the wicket keeper with the most dismissals in Test cricket. He got there in his 103rd Test match, which was 16 Test matches fewer than Ian Healy. He lost it to Adam Gilchrist, but he got it back and is still top of the table with 555 dismissals. Moving on to the 4th of October and 1996, and this day is Shahid Afridi broke the record, or then record, for the fastest 100 in one-day history. Promoted to pinch hit at number 3 in his first ODI innings, Afridi savaged Sri Lanka in the KCA Centenary Tournament match in Nairobi. He took only 37 balls to reach 3 figures, comfortably beating Sanath Jasuriya's existing record of 48 balls. That's a bit of pyrotechnics happening there. Now, we had Mark Boucher getting the record for the most Test dismissals as a wicketkeeper. In 1998, Ian Healy got the world record for the most Test dismissals off Rod Marsh. He broke the then world record of 355, and he went on, as I alluded to before, to 395 before Mark Boucher eclipsed that. Moving on to the 4th of October 1999, and rain in Colombo helped Sri Lanka salvage a draw on the final day of the 3rd Test. It was good news for Sri Lanka as it helped them secure their first ever Test victory over Australia. Now, that wasn't just any old side. It was Steve Waugh's Australian side, which went on to win 16 Test matches in a row after that point. Moving along to the 5th of October, 1952 saw the birth of arguably Pakistan's greatest cricket player, Imran Khan. And I'm sure if Taz was here, would be able to get a bit of how he sort of sees Imran Khan as one of the would it be the greatest cricket player that Pakistan's had, or would it be someone else like maybe Javed Miandad even? So that would have been an interesting debate to have. On 2009, another case of New Zealand making it to a final and then not getting the chocolates. This time in the Champions Trophy against Australia. That was just even more disappointing, losing to Australia. Australia cruising to the target quite easily in that one. 6th of October 1930, a simply marvellous day that saw the birth of Richie Benaud. Many of us won't remember seeing him play, but remember the voice. Same day, a few years later, his commentating buddy, Tony Greig, was born in 1946. Now, here's a good one. 2018, saw 19-year-old Prithvi Shaw become the youngest Indian to score a century on debut, which was also India's biggest Test victory by an innings and 272 runs against the West Indies. Same on the same day, 6th of October 2013, in the IPL. The IPL winners Mumbai, sorry, not in the IPL. IPL winners Mumbai got their second Champions League title, this time beating the Rajasthan Royals. And this match was also rather significant because it was the last match of IPL or T20 cricket at IPL level for Sachin Tendulkar and Rahul Dravid. 7th of October in 2012, West Indies pick up the World T20 title, beating Sri Lanka in Colombo. Quite comfortably in the end. After scoring 137, they bowled Sri Lanka out for a rather disappointing 101. In 1979, Jeff Dimmock became the third bowler and the first Australian to dismiss all 11 batsmen. Didn't help Australia, though, as they went on to lose the match against India. Coming on, rounding everything out on the 8th of October, 1997, Azam Mahmood and Mushtaq Ahmed equalled the Test record for the last wicket with a partnership of 151. They equalled the record set by Brian Hastings and Richard Collins for New Zealand in 1972. And in 1969, on the 8th of October, New Zealand scored its first ever Test win on the subcontinent. They wrapped up the victory, I should say, on the final day in 40 minutes as India collapsed to be all out for only 109. And that was our new today in history for this week. As we move along to what's actually happening in the present. Well, sort of. It's this week in the news. So what's happened this week? Well, the IPL's continued this week, and with some big scores being put on the board. And we'll dive into those a little bit later in the show. We'll also talk about how Australia have dominated New Zealand in the ODI series, with New Zealand absolutely capitulating in the final match, which was just played yesterday. News just coming to hand as we're going to air, actually, and just a couple of hours ago. Plunket Shield in New Zealand will start on the 18th of October. Now, still trying to confirm this, but apparently all matches are going to be played at 3 venues: Eden Park, Seddon Park, and the Basin Reserve. So that'll be interesting if that is correct and what the reasoning is behind that, considering that all of New Zealand is now at level 1. So we did have Super Rugby Aotearoa that was played at level 1 earlier this year, and we had crowds and we went right around the country. So it will be interesting to see what the reasonings are there behind 3 venues, if that is in fact the case. Now, moving along, and Ben Stokes has returned to the IPL after spending time with his sick father in Christchurch. He has now been sitting in quarantine for 6 days and will be apparently available for the game tomorrow between the Royals and the Capitals. As reported on the morning sports briefing this morning, Australia and India will start off with a pink ball test in Adelaide. But before they get to that pink ball test, that they will start off with white ball ODIs and T20s. The ODIs will be played in Brisbane and the T20s in Adelaide. So that could be quite a lot of cricket all in one go for Adelaide, going from the T320s through to the pink ball test match. Now, all of this is waiting to be approved by the state governments, but considering that most of Australia is fairly open now outside of Victoria, I'm expecting that this schedule will be approved. Bangladesh have created an internal competition to keep things going after the postponement of the Sri Lanka tour. They'll basically have 3 teams that will be led by 3 of their internationals and be playing it over the October period. Moving on to a bit of the backroom sort of shenanigans, and FICA, the Federation of International Cricketers Associations, are putting more problems on the table of the ICC, asking for a bigger slice of the pie for players. Now, key to the argument is the unauthorized use of player images in the promotion of cricket. So obviously there are big dollars rolling in for cricket, and it seems like players are missing out on some of that revenue as their images are used effectively illegally in the promotion of the game. And finally, after the sad passing of Dean Jones last week, which we brought to you in last week's show, he was farewelled at a private service and a final visit to the MCG, where music from Elton John and NXS was played over the PA system. Now, if you're not aware, Elton John and NXS band members are great friends of Dean Jones. Also, it was a rather small private affair because it was held in Victoria, and they're still limited to, I think it's around 10 people per funeral. So just close family and obviously friends there for that. To farewell Dean Jones, one of Australia's greatest. And that was our news this week. So let's head in to the cricket that we were played, and we are zooming along in the show tonight. Not surprisingly, as I'm going solo again. So make sure we get some comments in there, guys. So if I can digress onto some of those comments that you might have around cricket as well. Just have a bit of a slip of water. Try and keep that throat going, otherwise we're going to run out of voice as well. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the White Ferns have absolutely had a horrendous tour of Australia. They did pick up a consolation win in the T20, which we talked about, T20 series that we talked about last week, but things have only got worse in the ODI series. If we look, I'll bring up the old scoreboard, Miss Ford. And as you can see there, you can actually see the one of the T20s there, but if you focus, I don't know, oh, my mouse is coming up there. That's brilliant. Look, we let's start off with the first ODI. New Zealand bowled out for 180. It was a very poor performance there to start it off, and I think it really set the tone going forward. If we just dig into the scorecard there, we look again, pretty low scores. Nobody really taking sort of command of anything, right? Katie, towards the latter part of the innings when things are starting to look a bit dire anyway, got Katie Perkins, Maddie Green with 32 and 35 respectively, and then basically just getting rolled for 180, not even batting out the 50 overs. So that's, by today's standards, that's pretty poor form for the White Ferns. And we move on to Australia, and really, look, there's not a lot of pressure there. Alyssa Healy coming on, she really did smack the ball around a bit to get the innings underway before she lost her wicket. And then you've got Rachel Haynes, who I'll jump to the end, and so Rachel Haynes, who was actually named Player of the Series with her scores in the preceding games as well. So as we can see, Australia never really under pressure in that chase, and easily getting to the target of 181 with, look, you're looking at about over 16 overs left there in the innings. So rather comfortable innings in that first ODI for Australia. And then we moved on to the second. Let's just get there. We go. Bring the scorecard up. Better showing from the from New Zealand, but the problem here still remains lack of acceleration. The pitch was a good one, and we'll see this when we come to the third and final ODI. The pitch is a good pitch, and we can even see that when we go back to the first ODI when Australia scored 181 and basically at about 34 overs. And we can see here good scores from Sophie Devine, Amy Satterthwaite, and with a 79, 16, and a 69 from Satterthwaite. But again, look at the tail. Basically, when we needed to accelerate to really sort of ram home the advantage that was there, basically the batting just fell away miserably, actually, and it's really disappointing when you look at that scorecard where the tail end really didn't offer anything. And if we can just look at the fall of wickets, with about 6 overs to go, we're sitting at 203. So you'd sort of thinking, you go at maybe sort of eights there or thereabouts, and you could sort of get through to a rather competitive total. 252 looked good at the half time, I suppose, at the break after 180 odd in the first ODI. But really, again, no big challenge for the Aussies. When we look at Healy, again, getting Australia off to a quick start. And then Rachel Haynes, who I've mentioned before, player of the series, going on to make 82. And I think really the series was summed up in the way. If I just bring, where's that gone? It's just sorry, I just bring that back again. It just jumped, I think. Just jumped off what I wanted to. Well, we can see there with Meg Lanning. Now, Meg Lanning needed 3 runs to score her 100. They needed one. Australia needed 1 run to win, and New Zealand didn't have the competitive edge to try and stop her getting to the century. And it's just like gave her a ball outside off wide, and she just basically guided it through the inner ring down to the boundary to get her 100. And Aussie the win. They only needed 1 run, and it basically summed it up for me. In the fact is that where was the fight? Where was the fight to be able to stop the Australian player getting to a century? It's always a landmark, and it's just basically disappointing. I don't know. This is like Aaron sort of saying, there's a lack of depth and skill. Yeah, I suppose there is when you're playing the best, but the fact for me is that there's actually a lack of fight. They're going up against the best, and that's when you want to. As if you're going in there and you're sort of thinking, hey, we're we're underdogs. That's when you raise your game. It's not when you fall away. It's not when you say, "Oh, well, it's Australia. We're going to lose anyway." They went into these T20s and into these ODIs talking about how it's the best preparation they can have. Where they're going to have a 2 week lockdown, which was the biggest preparation to any series they've ever had. This is the way they put it. I'm not putting it this way. They put it this way. The team, and they had that preparation time, and they basically capitulated in the T20 series and the ODIs. They picked up this win in the T20 in the last game, but then Australia had basically done a bit of rotation as well with that final T20 game. So we see there Australia again comfortably winning. Look at that, 5 overs to spare. And I suppose when you look at that 5 overs to spare, when they batted first in the third and final ODI, there's no surprise that they made it through to 325. It's just like that was just it's an amazing score. But when you also take into fact, look, so let's just go through the scorecard first. Anyway, Rachel Haynes again with a 96. Alyssa Healy with 87. No fall of wicket until the 25th, nearly the 26th over. Australia racking up 144 runs for the first wicket, and really the platform was laid. 4 simple dropped catches, many numerous misfields, balls through the legs, going through the boundary. Again, lack of fight and just a lack of effort. And then there was no surprises when we come down to the New Zealand innings, and it's just like, here we go, all out in the 27th over for 93. And it's just like, I'm sorry, that's just embarrassing. That's going back, that's taking New Zealand women's cricket back a long time. In fact, it might even be doing disservice to the guys to the ladies that have come in the previous, years gone by, when they've basically put in effort like that. That's just very disappointing. You look at Southwaite putting in a good showing there with 41, Maddie Green with 22, but really they're the only 2 players that got over 6 runs in the inning. So a very disappointing effort there from the White Ferns. A lot of soul searching for them to do. You want people, if you're going to come back, if you're going to go on and say, we want people to come and watch our games, you have to put in a better effort than this. You're not going to be able to get people through the turnstiles watching women's cricket if this is the competitive edge they're going to go and watch. It's not going to happen. They need to really go back and look in the mirror. And I'm probably sounding a bit hard on this, but if the men had played this badly, we would be digging into them big time. And I don't see the difference. If we want to talk about equality, this is equality. This is about lifting your game. This is about being better and making sure that you put in a better performance than what this was. This was absolutely shocking. That's enough of that, though. We're going to move on. It's depressing as it is. We're going to go to the IPL now. So the IPL cracked on again this week, second week. And we've seen some great games happen this week. I mean, it's interesting. We saw the earlier part of the week. We saw some big scores being scored. We've carried on from the first week where we saw some scores in the 200s, and we looked at it. And I know we talked about it with Taz, and Sharjah is basically a postage stamp, and you get big scores there. It's a small ground, but we're actually seeing some big scores at the other grounds. And I haven't seen any of the footage, to be honest. I've only been following the scores from the scoreboards and actually watching ball by ball on cricket websites. So don't know whether the ropes have been bought in or not, but like for example, there's been some big scores over 200 scored at Abu Dhabi as well. So there's big scores outside of Sharjah being scored as well. So if we go into our first game that we're looking at, we've got a couple of games here to look at, and two cracking games on the 3rd of October. I'm just going to cycle through to the 3rd of October here in my old screeny thing here and bring the scoreboard up there and bring it up on screen there. Now, this wasn't one of the big scores, but it was actually, I said, two cracking games the 3rd of October. Very close, only 4 runs in it. And obviously, Rajasthan Royals falling short only by 5 runs. So a cracking game there. Absolutely. Actually, no, I've got this around the wrong way. Sorry, because I'm reading it wrong. It's actually Rajasthan Royals getting up over. So the Royal Challengers Bangalore getting up over the Rajasthan Royals. This is like the Royals scoring 154 for 6. Looking like a pretty good score at the time when they first started off with the Challengers chasing. But in the end, it's just like the Challengers just basically paced the innings all the way along. They didn't really start out of the blocks fast, and they didn't really accelerate. They just carried on ticking over, and they basically got it with only 5. The score with 5 balls to spare, but only 2 lost wickets. So pretty comfortable. They kept the run chase under control all the way along, and so that was the Challengers getting up over the Royals in that one. Now moving on to that 3rd of October one where they actually played 2 games in a day. Because most days they're actually just playing the 1 game. So I'm just going down and look, see, now it's jumped. Let's go back to the 3rd. Where's it gone? There it is. There we go. Now, this is a little bit deceptive. 2 massive scores coming up for Delhi Capitals and KKR. Delhi Capitals batting first, and Prithvi Shaw, who got a mention in our Today in History with the youngest debutant to score a Test century for India. He went to score 66 there for the Capitals. And we can see Shreyas Iyer getting 88, but look at the strike rates. Amazing strike rates. 231. Rishabh Pant coming in with 38 at 223 strike rate. So great strike rates coming in there. And even with Prithvi Shaw, his 160, not shabby at all. So all the way down, you're seeing some pretty high strike rates coming in. If we move down to the Night Riders, now the Night Riders got close at 210, but to be honest, actually, they probably, it looks a bit closer than it was. They got a few runs late in that innings through Owen Morgan and Rahul Tripathi. I've said it, yeah. So basically, yeah, getting some run late. We look at those. Owen Morgan at 244 and Tripathi is at 225. So sort of hitting the ball around towards the end when they're really getting into a bit of trouble. So, but again, massive scores happening, 200 plus. So we're seeing 400 runs scored in a game. So quite a big effort there. Now we move on with those 200 run scores coming along. And quite the next day we got it. So 4th of October, and we've got the Mumbai Indians this time racking up 208. And again, if we look at the strike rates coming through, Quinton de Kock this time, because interesting, we're seeing Quinton de Kock, and also when we come to have a look at the highest run scorers, some interesting, the top 2 highest run scorers, but we'll get to that a bit later. Quinton de Kock coming in with 67 off 39, because we're seeing a lot of Indian batsmen actually performing really well in this tournament, and it's not just the internationals that have come in, the hired guns that are coming in and scoring the runs. So quite consistent through that scorecard for the Indians, and they got through to 208. But basically for the Sunrisers, never really in it sort of thing, to be honest. They sort of got off to a good start. David Warner and Johnny Besto. But if you look at Warner's strike rate, sort of not, I mean, not low, but when you're chasing 200, it's not exactly high either. So we probably want to be around that 160, 170 mark as a minimum when you're chasing 200. So it leaves a little bit for the tail to do. And as we can see, with that sort of got them unstuck a little bit. So maybe they need to go a bit harder early on to try and relieve that pressure that was put on towards the tail. And we can see David Warner probably getting a decent score for a change. And yeah, but they're falling short on 174. And the final match that we're going to look at, I'll just back the truck up here. Beep, beep, beep. And on the 5th, we've got CSK versus the Kings 11. So if I'll bring that one up there. And where's the scorecard? There's the scorecard. And we can see, basically, we've got Kings 11 wouldn't have been too unhappy at 178 for 4. At the halfway point, we've got Kale Raul, who's been absolute fire during this tournament, racking up a 63. But look at that strike rate. Probably needed to be going a little bit harder than the 121, considering he was in there for so long. Mayank Agarwal sort of with the 26, but really looking at the guys coming in, Nicholas Puran, who obviously did that magnificent piece of fielding that we've seen on our screens over the last week or so, where he caught the ball and threw it back into the field all while he was in midair. He sort of gave the innings a bit of impetus with 33 off 17. Glenn Maxwell, not the big show at the moment. He's had a couple of innings, but nothing too big to talk about. It came in and scored a few runs at the end along with Safraz Khan. But let's look at, hang on, what's happening here? Sorry, just here we go. I was looking for the rest of the scoreboard, but of course they don't need the rest of the scoreboard because the CSK got the total without the loss of a wicket. And then we look at the total. We've got 181, which is run down with 2 overs and a bit to spare. So we've got Shane Watson, his best innings of the match, 83 at the strike rate of 156. And Faf du Plessis getting his high score for this tournament at 87 off 164. And keep a note of that. We'll talk about Faf a little bit later, or not too far away, actually, when we look at the runs and who scored what and who's at the top of the ladder. So there we go. CSK actually winning that one quite comfortably. I think Kings 11 will be looking at that one thinking, yep, we needed to go harder earlier. We just didn't really get the runs on the board that we thought we should have, or what they said they would have been happy at halftime. But in hindsight, at the end of the game, they look at Kyle Raul at strike rate in there so long, probably needed to boost that a bit, or quite a bit actually, not a bit. So we're moving along and we go to the most run scorers. And there is Kale Rahul at the top of the table. And he scored 302 runs and he's just pipped Faf by about 3 runs. Now, here's the interesting thing. If we have a look at Kale Rahul, he's got 2 big scores. He's had 5 innings, but he's got 2 big scores. One of them's 132. And the other one, which we just saw, was 60 odd. So when we look at Faf's innings, he scored nearly the same amount of runs, but his high score's 87. And we go across to his average at 74. So he's actually consistently hitting runs in his innings. It's not just been an innings of one big innings that has got him those runs. He's actually scored a few innings there to get to his total of 299, and obviously maintaining that average as well across those innings. So being a bit more consistent. But I think one thing we can notice, we talked about this last week as well. If we look within the top 10, we're seeing a great smattering of actual, we'll call them home-based, homegrown players. I know they're not playing in India, but we've got KL Rahul, Mayank Agarwal, Rohit Sharma, Shreyas Iyer, Surya Kumar Yadav, Prithvi Shaw, Devdutt Padikkal, all in the, so lots of Indian names making up, and new ones too. I mean, like not just, got Rohit Sharma, obviously well known, but KL Rahul, who's been around a bit, but still not the big names. But some of the younger fellas coming through and making their mark in terms of this IPL. If we now look at, we're just going to go into the most runs we've got. Where's the strike rate's gone? I've got batting strike rate. There we go. Now we have a look, and let's look at the strike rates. Here's the power hitters of what we're seeing at the moment. Kieron Pollard at the top of the list there, 208. Now, if we look at it, his highest has been 60. He's had 5 innings, so he's getting quite a few not outs if his average is 163. So he's not only got a high strike rate, but he's managing to actually not lose his wickets. He's got 4 not outs out of the 5 innings. So there's a great asset there for the Mumbai Indians. And actually, keep an eye on that. I might just actually quickly going to jump back to the runs. I'm just going to see if we have a look. We've got Rohit Sharma for the Indians and Surya Kumar Yadav featuring for the Indians. But if we keep an eye out, they've got key players in all of the tables that are featuring at the top of the table. And obviously here at the strike rate, probably one of the more important stats in T20, Kieron Pollard at 208, again for the Mumbai Indians. And again, 4 not outs, 163 average, 163 runs scored. So he's getting in there and he's finishing off innings. He's coming in as a finisher. Marcus Stoinis just short of the 200 strike rate. And again, not a bad average there with 41. And so there's some pretty high averages there and some pretty high strike rates. So when you've got a high strike rate and a high average, your team's going to be doing pretty well. And the Mumbai Indians are definitely doing that. Moving on to the bowling, and we'll move to the wickets. Now, things have changed a little bit from last week. When we looked at the table last week, the spinners were pretty much flavour of the day. And they've sort of fallen a little bit off the wickets taken. Now we look at Rabada as top of the table there. And we look at it, he's for the Delhi Capitals with 12 wickets. But look at the next 3. The next 3 highest wicket takers, all from the Mumbai Indians. Jasprit Bumrah, Trent Boult, and James Patterson. Jasprit Bumrah picking up 4 wickets in the last match. I can't remember who it was actually. He came into the last over and he'd only gone for about 12 runs. Unfortunately, he went for a few runs in that, but he got the last wicket and wrapped up the match in that over. I think it might have been Jofra Archer that might have actually been the one that hit a few runs before he holed out. Trent Boult with 10 wickets. James Pattinson with 9 wickets. So Mumbai Indians are going to be featuring at the top of the table if you got your bowlers taking wickets like they are. And when we look at their economy rates, Jasprit Bumrah's a little bit high. That would have been pulled down with the match the other day where he was rather economical, only went for 5 runs and over. But Trent Boult, James Patterson's in the 7s. And when you're looking at fast bowlers and T20 going for 7s, you're going to take that. You're going to get some unlucky edges here and there and some lucky hits. So going at 7s, I think they'll be happy, especially when they're looking at the number of wickets that they're picking up as well. Moving along to the most economical bowling figures. And this is where the spinners are still in favour. So we saw last week where they're actually at top end of the wicket table as well. But one thing that they haven't fallen off is the economy table. Now, when we look at it, Akshar Patel, and last week was Washington Sundar, that was top of the table. But look at it, Akshar Patel, 4.57 runs per over. That's just crazy good. Now, yeah, Washington Sundar still at 4.8, absolutely crazy good as well. Amazing to see the fact that these guys, when we look at all of the top 10 bowlers going under 8 runs and over, but then you look at the top 5 bowlers and geez, they're basically going at 5s, and that's just crazy for a T20 match. And consistency, when we look at it, you look at Patel, the top Sundar, they played 4 matches, they played 5 matches, they're bowling quite a few overs, so it's not like they've just bowled 1 or 2 overs. They're going along pretty well. Again, we look at it, we've got good smattering of the Indians coming through as well as the internationals. Rashid Khan, obviously from Afghanistan, Mohammad Nabi waving the Afghani flag there, doing really well. From a New Zealand point of view, definitely good to see Trent Boult up there. We've got the series with West Indies, I think, kicking off not too far away once the IPL's over. So we look forward to Bolty coming back with that same form. So I think that's we're just looking at most 4 wickets. Got Bumrah, who's we talked about Rabada. Obviously, one of the reasons why they've up there with the table, top of the table. We've got Rabada's picked up. Actually, what's going on here? This is a bit confusing. Sorry, I'm not sure what the table. But anyway, yeah, they've got Jasper Bumrah and Rabada, Kagiso Rabada, with 1 4 for each, and then I think the table just goes crazy. Anywho, moving on to the table, and let's see who's at the top of the table. And there we go. I said to keep an eye on those figures around the Mumbai Indians, and they are at the top of the table. Well, sort of, but having three top wicket takers in the top 4, I think is helping them pick up those Ws, particularly be happy with 3 Ws in a row there now that they've got the ball rolling. So in saying that, the Delhi Capitals in second place, I would have thought they might have actually been ahead of the Indians, considering that they've only played 5 games and are on the same number of points. And the Kolkata Knight Riders bringing up third place there, along with the Royal Challengers Bangalore on 6. Still very tight. I think it's still early days. I think next week for sure we're going to start to see a pattern where if you're Kings 11, you're going to start to worry a bit. You want to start getting some wins under your belt. Otherwise, it's going to be just making up the numbers. So time for Kings 11 to pull finger. I think OJ was a Kings 11 fan, so he'll be hoping they'll sort of be pulling their socks up and getting a few W's in the wins column this week so that they come up the table. Mumbai Indians will be looking to carry on with their form to stay at the top of their table. And if their batters, likes of Kyron Pollard, keep smashing the ball around like they have been, and the bowlers of Bumrah, Boult and co keep picking up the wickets, they're probably going to see them next week at the top of the table as well. So that's our IPL wrap for this week. So yes, we're flying along in the old show today, and yeah, we're gonna run out a bit of topics today, but I did have something ready. That's okay. We've got, as I mentioned in the news, we've got that series that I think we'll be all looking forward to, Australia versus India in Australia. Now, over the last, I don't know how many years now, India-Australia battles have been absolute crackers, especially now that India have got a fast bowling attack, which works in Australia. You know, they've got the firepower to match the Australian quicks in Australia. We've talked about this in previous shows on numerous occasions. You go to Australia, you got fast, bouncy pitches, and you got quick Australian bowlers, and you need to fight fire with fire. And quite a lot of teams fall over when it comes to that. Well, India have a bowling lineup that can match it. And then if there's spinning options with Ashwin in the test matches in particular, you've got someone that's got the spinning option to match Nathan Lyon. I'd still probably rate Nathan Lyon being, you know, the premier out of the 2 teams, spinner that is. But you know, you've got the options. They've got the variety to bring in to take in against Australia. Anywho, before they play the test, they'll be playing, as I mentioned in the news, the ODI series. So that'll be kicking off on the 25th of November with a day nighter. They're all day nighters at the Gabba in Brisbane. Now, I'm not sure what the situation is in Australia. I know Melbourne obviously has had lockdown. They're starting to talk about coming out of lockdown, but with the rest of Australia has been carrying on pretty much as normal. I'm not sure what the crowd situation is and whether they've still got limitations around the crowds, but they'll basically be playing all 3 ODI matches at the Gabba. Now, that'll be interesting because we've always thought that they've always played the first game in a series at the Gabba, because just mentioning that bouncy pitch and their quicks, it works out well. You get the opposition coming in, harass them, and get the ball flying around their throat, flying around chest high, against the opposition who are coming in fresh. So it'll be interesting. You're playing 3 games at the Gabba. Maybe Australia gets away with that first one. After that, does India adjust? And then they basically sort of like game on from there. How about the Indian bowlers? We've talked about how they've got the quicks to be able to fight fire with fire. How will they come and land, and will they be on the dot and ready to go and start firing it back at the Australian batsmen? So that'll be an interesting one to see, and look forward to that. Sort of starting 25th of November. So what are we looking at? Basically about 7 weeks away before that starts. And obviously we've got to finish the IPL, got to get the players over there, finish the quarantining, and then into the cricket. Once those ODIs are finished, there'll be a very short break, a few days, and they jump into the T20 at the Adelaide Oval. Now, I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see whether the 2 teams rotate their players. I'm thinking they'll probably India will bring quite a sizable squad, like most sporting teams do these days at the moment. You're taking enlarged squads around because you don't have the luxury to fly somebody in at the drop of a hat. They have to go through quarantine protocols. So they are flying with larger squads. So the fact that India will have a larger squad, will they rotate their players? Will Australia also rotate the players? They have, when they look at further down the season, they are going to be playing a test series against South Africa, whilst they play at the same time a T20 series against New Zealand. So will they take this opportunity to make sure that those T20 players that we're playing against New Zealand actually get enough game time against some good opposition? So that'll kick off on the 4th of December. 2-day gaps between, or days, 1 day off between those before the last one in the 8th of December. Moving on, and then basically, I think, at the end of the day, for me, it's all about test matches, and particularly with these 2 teams, they've had some awesome battles, test series battles over the last few seasons, over the last few years. And this will be no different, I don't think. They'll be starting off, as I mentioned, a day-nighter pink ball test in Adelaide to start the series off. Now, though, it'll be an interesting one because they would have just played their 3 T20s in Adelaide, and they're going to jump into that day-nighter against in Adelaide as well with the pink ball. I think this will be a great chance to see. We've seen a few pink ball tests now in Australia. There is the talk about that twilight session and how the pink ball seems to get a bit more action on it in that session. I think unfortunately we've had teams that don't seem to have taken advantage. Australia, when they've had that twilight session, they've definitely taken advantage of it. Other teams that have played pink ball tests there don't seem to have. It'll be interesting how India adapt if they get the opportunity to bowl in the twilight, and see whether they are able to take advantage of those conditions in the twilight, where you can get a bit more swing happening in particular. Now, moving on, after the Adelaide pink ball test will be the traditional Melbourne Boxing Day test. Now, here is the issue with the Melbourne Boxing Day test. As I said, I think things are getting better in Melbourne. I'm guessing by the time that December 26th rolls around, there will be different criteria in Melbourne. Whether the criteria will be relaxed enough to allow the Boxing Day test to go ahead is an unknown. If for some reason the Boxing Day test is unable to be played, that game will be played at the Sydney Cricket Ground, and they will have back-to-back tests at the Sydney Cricket Ground, where they will basically have the Boxing Day test and the New Year's Day test. Now, interestingly enough, I look at the dates there. I'm not sure if the dates that I'm looking at, sorry, I should have brought this up. I apologize profusely. Bring that up. There we've got you'll see that the Boxing Day test starting on the 26th, which is Boxing Day, obviously. Usually you've got the second test starting around the New Year's, because it's called the New Year's Day test sort of thing. So after a few days off in Melbourne, and they usually start quite quickly. But there's a bit of a gap there. So there is a gap after the Boxing Day test, which could be played in Sydney, to the actual Sydney test. And they'll be wrapping it up where they started in the fourth test on the 19th of January, 15th of January, at the Gabba. So they will be going back to a bouncy pitch at the Gabba, which will be wrapping things up. And hopefully, it's still a competition going, and it's all maybe tied up by the time we get to the Gabba, and it's winner takes all. It's always an interesting with a four test series, because you've got the good opportunity these days in particular where a lot of tests get results, especially in Australia, where you'll get good weather to complete it, where you'll get results. So you could go into a four test match series with 2-2, which is always a bit interesting. Anywho, that's the Australia Australia-India series, starting off with one-dayers, T20s, followed by the test matches. And that's all I really had prepared for today. So, and we haven't had too many comments coming through into the chat through the chat rooms. So not really a lot more to talk about. Might just sort of have a look at what we've got coming in. Just back this up to the IPL. Back to the IPL there. And what do we got? The 8th. So we've got tomorrow morning we're going to see the Sunrisers versus the Kings 11. Now we've just talked about the Kings 11 and how they are basically going to have to pull finger. So there's the squads sort of thing preview. A little thinking. We'll just bring that up. Or no, I won't, because then I can look like I know what I'm talking about. You got to said they've got 5 minutes. But Sunrisers have lost their first 2 games of the season against the Royal Challengers Bangalore and the Kolkata Knight Riders. So and then they bounce back. So they'll be looking to carry that on after the bounce back and complete a hat trick of wins to follow on from those early defeats. Coming into this, is it Kings 11? They'll be seeking to break a 3-match losing streak. Now, you don't want to get on to a losing streak, do you? Because the problem with a losing streak is that you start to just basically carry on losing. So Kings 11 will be ending Kings 11 ended on the losing side of a Super Over thriller in their first game against the Delhi Capitals. Well, they probably butchered that one, to be honest, and they should have won it. They defeated RCB in the second game. However, KL Rahul and Co have lost 3 in a row, as mentioned before. So, although KL Rahul is at the top of the batters table, he needs to basically get a big score again at a high strike rate, put some big runs on the board for the Kings 11 to pull through on that one. Now, I'm just going to see if this is going to be played in Dubai, so it won't be at the postage stamp of Sharjah. Club cricket, yep, club cricket's going to be kicking off. Good point. So club cricket's kicking off this on the 31st, October 31st. Warm-up games happening this week. I know that QMU has a warm-up game against a team from the northern region, from Whangarei sub-union, up at actually north of Auckland, actually. So I think they're going halfway each to play their game. So that'll be played by QMU out at having their warm-up game. I don't know how I know about QMU's warm-up games. Maybe because we've got a few people from QMU that come on the show. So, yep, that'll be kicking on 31st of October. Make sure you get out to the grounds. Now, right here on Swinging from the Hips through New Zealand Sport Radio, we're hoping to actually get some live interviews through those games. What we're hoping for is just a couple of chats with the respective captains before the game start. We'll have a chat with some key players at half time. And hopefully, if there's some fifers and 50s and 100s, we'll get a chat with the players that have got those as well. So make sure you stay tuned and keep your phone handy, because we will be putting those little snippets. They won't be longer than 2 or 3 minutes, just quick interviews around club cricket. Now, if you're listening to this outside of Auckland, please get in touch with us, because we'd love to get those club cricket updates from around New Zealand as well. These are predominantly going to be club cricket games in Auckland that we'll be able to get updates from, but we'd love to be able to get club cricket updates from around the country. So if you're in a position to be able to attend club cricket games, get in touch with us so we can talk to you about getting your bit of footage and interviews so that we can put them up. Kaipara Cricket Club is where that is going to be held. So if you feel like a bit of a feed and some good Indian food on a barbie, head on up to the Kaipara Cricket Club, because there'll be, I'm sure the boys will throw you a lamb chop and a beer if you come up to watch the game. As also the Plunket Shield. Now, I'm at 18th of October that's kicking off, so that's very soon. Now, as I mentioned, that's going to be played at 3 grounds. Now, I'm just going to try and see if I can bring up Plunket Shield 2020. 21 and see if we get anything coming up in terms of the schedule. Here we go. Oh, that's candy. So the page I go to hasn't got it. Let's see NZC. Have they got it? Here we go. NZC. Oh, this is handy. There we go. Okay, so interestingly enough, they announced that it's going to be starting, the first round is going to be starting on the 18th. But when I bring this up, oh, damn it, add to the stream. Bring up there. As we go. Click the right buttons. Click the right buttons. Right, so as we can see, it's actually kicking off on the 19th, according to the schedule that I've just pulled up, and that's from NZC. So Northern Districts will be playing the Stags at Seddon Park in Hamilton for their first game of the season. Now, that will be interesting. See what side Northern rolls out. I'm sort of thinking, obviously, players, some key Northern players, Trent Bolt, for example, will still be involved in the IPL, but that could be a lot of black caps in that one. In that northern side, starting off. Wellington Firebirds taking on Canterbury at the Basin Reserve. And again, that'll be interesting. We've got Devon Conway, who's now eligible for the Black Caps, and I'll be looking forward to seeing Devon Conway coming out there. And also Finn Allen, who's moved from Auckland Aces down to the Wellington Firebirds as well. Auckland Aces will be taking on the Otago Volts at the Outer Oval at Eden Park. Hopefully, I'll be able to get along to that, and might be able to. That's starting on the 20th, so that's starting a day later. We'll try and get along to Eden Park and see if we can get a bit of footage or some interviews happening there as well, and we'll see how that goes. We'll put that. That's the first round of Plunket Shield. That's not too far away. Basically, about 10 days away, just over 10 days away from the start of Plunket Shield. So that's yep, Simon, that's all right, mate. I've been all by here by myself anyway. So if you've got anything to talk about, Simon, quickly post it up here so we've got something to talk about, because I've run out of content again by myself. Although I'm saying that I've made it through to 53 minutes, which is not bad. I can't say I'm not doing too badly there. Anyhow, just going to go on to the, let's see. Just going to see. Oh, that didn't work for me. Schedule. Nothing there really. International. Yeah. Seeing if there's anything coming up here. No, that's basically it, guys. So I think I'll wrap it up there for the evening. And thanks to the guys that tuned in. And hopefully I haven't bored you too much, and I've kept you entertained. And we'll see you around. Remember, we've got no show on next week. We will be on the 19th of October. I'll make sure I get that date right. Don't want to put you crook. Yep, the 19th is our new night that will be coming in on Mondays. Hopefully, I won't be alone since I've moved it to the 19th to be able to, so that the guys can join me. So yeah, no show next week. Our next show will be the 19th of October. It's the Monday, and we'll be going swinging from the hip once again then. In the meantime, make sure you tune into all our shows happening during the week. One more time on Monday night, we're driving Mall for the rugby fix. Tuesday nights with your basketball. Find out what's happening in those NBA playoffs happening at the moment. Can the Lakers take that out? And Wednesday night, we've got the league show. Now, that's coming to the pointy end of the season with the finals. Thursday night will be blank because Swinging from the Hip will be coming in on Monday. Friday night, we'll have the preview for the rugby. And in fact, tune in tomorrow night because we'll be talking All Blacks Australia test, which is happening on Sunday this weekend. Sunday night, we'll review that first test as well. And then, of course, every morning, we've got the morning sports briefing on New Zealand Sport Radio, as all those other shows are. So make sure you're tuned in here on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and we'll see you next Monday night, the 19th, for more Swinging from the Hip for your cricketing fix.